Good evening, Kenton community, and welcome to our first of 3 meetings with parents and community members regarding school reopening. Tonight, the format, we are looking at a 1-hour duration, and our format will be really broken into 2 parts. Our first part will be a presentation. During that presentation, we are going to bring everyone up to speed with the instructional models, as well as food service and transportation, cleaning and safety, and contact tracing and testing. Then what we'll do is we'll leave about a 45-minute session, 40 to 45-minute session on questions and answers. The questions and answers will ask you to help us out with typing those questions in. We have a team of people here at Kenmore Middle School, and we are going to be focusing on answering those questions, not only in typing, but then I will be reading some questions and answers out to the community as we progress along. Very much so the same format as we had last Thursday for our virtual academy presentation. So without further ado, I'm going to turn our presentation over to Mike Muscarella, who will start us off with our instructional schedule and model.
Good evening, Kenton families. My name is Mike Muscarella, and I'm the Director of Elementary Education in the Kenton School District. Tonight, I'm going to talk to you about the 2 instructional models that we are down to start the school year. Model 1 is a hybrid model that has students returning to school 2 days a week and learning from home 3 days a week. The second model is a fully remote model, which is students at home 5 days a week. First, I'm going to talk about the hybrid remote model, talk about some of the benefits and challenges, and further explain that model. One of the benefits of the hybrid model is students are in school part of the week. It's a predictable schedule. We know in all of the models that we're putting forward in the 2 models that it's difficult for our families. But we're explaining the 2 models that we're down to. The challenges of the hybrid model, it is not as much instruction, synchronous instruction, live with a teacher that occurs in the remote model. Other challenges is PPE and the equipment necessary for our students and staff. The other challenge is staffing considerations that need to be solved prior to beginning of the school year. I'm going to talk a little bit about the model. The hybrid model that is one of the 2 options. Group A students would attend in person on Monday and Tuesday. They would be home on Wednesdays, Thursdays, and Fridays. Group B, students would be at home Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They would be in person on Thursday and Friday. So Group A, Group B. Wednesdays are a combination of synchronous, students learning from instructors in real time, and asynchronous, not delivered in person. So Wednesdays is a combination of those 2. One of the advantages of the Wednesday, it prepares students should we need to go to a remote model. There is some synchronous instruction, meaning live instruction with a teacher. On the 3 days that they are not in school, they will be given assignments through Google Classroom or Canvas. During crisis teaching last year, teachers were using a variety of platforms. The platforms that Kenton will use will either be Google Classroom or Canvas. These assignments will need to be completed any time in the day. There's flexibility for families, especially multiple children in the household. They can be completed throughout the day. They can be completed in the evening. There's flexibility in the work that's being completed while students are at home. Next, I'm going to talk about the fully remote model. The fully remote model has students at home. The benefit, students would have more synchronous time with teachers. They would be working with teachers each of those days. The challenge, students aren't in school. Students are at home. If we're forced to go to a remote model, we will be releasing the same time how we get out of a remote model. Again, if we go to a remote model, we also would release a plan of how we get out of that model. We know students need to be in school. K-12 would have a modified schedule. There would be opportunities for in-person meetings as needed. Wednesday would be a combination. So flexible learning for K-4. We know our youngest learners are going to need different things than our oldest learners. Again, Wednesday in the fully remote model, flexible learning for K-4, as needed in grades 5, an opportunity for student conferencing, meeting with teachers during office hours. The instruction in both models that I just talked about are anchored in New York State Education Department requirements. We have been very busy. Our teachers have been very busy attending training throughout the summer, and that will continue as we enter the new school year on different learning management platforms, specifically Google and Canvas. Our district is working very hard to ensure our students have devices. We know the need. We are working internally to make sure that our students have devices to learn at home in both models that I just talked about. As far as the Virtual Learning Academy, the commitment was September through January. We're reviewing the enrollment and working on the staffing at this time. At this time, I'm going to turn over to Kim Roll, our Director of Food Service, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about our food service program and how we can meet the needs of our students and community.
Okay, so for food service, just so I can give a little bit of, share a little bit of what food service will look like, school meals will look like when the students come back. For the elementary students, we're planning on meals being delivered to the classrooms. Okay, so that, so for breakfast, it would be delivered right to the classroom for the elementary students, as well as the lunch will be served there. And I just want to show a little picture here of what like a breakfast would be totally sealed up and delivered to the classroom for each student to have. Obviously, breakfast breaks is one of our #1 breakfast items. So it'll be all packaged up and delivered to the classroom like that for each student. For middle school and high school, we'll have breakfast carts at the entranceways where the students can grab their breakfast and then take it on to where they're going to eat. For the lunch time for middle school and high schools, lunch will be served in the cafeteria, and then the students will go through the line, get their meal, and then take it to wherever their assigned eating place is. Realizing that we have to keep the students 6 feet apart, socially distanced during meal service too, so they can actually take their mask off and enjoy their meal. So they may be assigned in a different area to eat that is safe and comfortable for them. One of the things that our students are used to is that we have 8 or 9 meal choices every day, entree choices. And right now we're going to start the school year out with probably just 2 or 3 meal choices, just because this is so new to everyone. So we want to be able to make sure that the staff are able to prepare the meals and that we meet the needs of the students. Menus can always expand once we get into the routine of things and kind of understand, what the parents are looking for, what the students are looking for. Meal preparation, all the meals will be packaged up and sealed so that the students will get the complete meal all wrapped up. An elementary meal will be served in a complete container, kind of like this. And then high school will have a container that's similar, but they're able to take this and carry it on to wherever they need to go and have their meals. Meal preparation time in the kitchens, just so you know this, all the staff follow all of our sanitation regulations, hairnets, gloves, we'll be using masks now, right, during COVID, aprons, all of that stuff. So they will always follow the proper sanitation requirements as they always do. I will tell you that for the first few weeks of school, I am holding off on a la carte items just because we're going to start slow and then we can always build on that. Milk will be available just if your child needs to just purchase the milk. But other than that, like the ice cream and the cookies and stuff, we're going to hold off on. So there's a little bit different. So compared to the way we did it in the spring, and we did 3 days of pickup, right? For anyone that was 18 or younger, meals were all free. So it's a little bit different this year because the federal government has decided that it's no longer free to everyone in every school district. So now the regulation is that it's based on students being enrolled in the school district and it's based on the student's eligibility category. So if your child was free or reduced last year for school meals, then they would be free or reduced again this year. If your child was on full price meals, then they would have to pay for meals for this school year. One of the things that we have offered in Kenton schools, we have 3 elementary schools that are CEP, and that means Community Eligibility Provision. So Holmes Elementary, Franklin Elementary, and Hoover Elementary all are entitled to breakfast and lunch for free to all students enrolled in those schools every day. We're excited to share that we were just approved by State Ed to add Franklin Middle and Hoover Middle to that list too. So any students enrolled in any of those 5 buildings are eligible for free meals regardless of your eligibility status. And we'll have more on that in the future, but just so you're aware of that. The other schools, unfortunately, we are not able to pull them into this program yet, but so an application will need to be put on file. The applications from last year are good for the first 30 days of the school year. So we'll start out, if they were free last year, they're good for the first 30 days and we'll get those applications home to you. The other thing that we're doing now is we're working on a new online ordering system so that parents can actually go onto our website, see the menus. If you haven't done it already, seeing the menus online, you need to do that because it's great. It tells you calories, it tells you carbs, it tells you all these great things. So now you'll be able to go on and you'll be able to click on ordering meals for your children. And then if you had to pay for your students' meals, then you can either do that there, or you could always send a check-in or any other way that you were used to paying. So one of the great things about this new online system is it also has a category for allergies. So student allergies can be listed there, and then it comes down to the kitchen, so we can see that Johnny Smith is allergic to peanut butter, and we need to make sure that nothing in that classroom has peanut butter. So we're well aware of that our students with allergies or food sensitivities, and we will definitely be sure to take care of handling those situations to be sure they're not infected in any way. I just want to throw this out there too. So obviously if the students are going 2 days of school and then 3 days at home or virtual learning, then we'll offer meals for families to pick up. There will be more information coming out about that. I will tell you that I'm also going to have an option for families to be able to pick up meals like early evening, like maybe at 3 to 6 or something like that, so that in case you're working and you need to be able to pick the meals up after you get out of work. So we'll work on that and get those details out to you soon. Right now, I think that's enough information to share about school meals. I just encourage you to take advantage of our meal programs. And if we can help you out, you can certainly reach out and let us know. Thank you so much. I'm going to turn this over to Jim Nestico from Transportation.
Good evening, everybody. School safety is the #1 objective for the Kenton Transportation Department. Our goal is to have no more than 1 student per seat with everybody wearing masks on the school bus this year. Being in a hybrid plan, the number of families that have opted out, we are very hopeful that it's reduced the density so that all students will be able to remain socially distant. All the students are going to have to be in assigned seats this year because that's going to help with any contact tracing that might have to take place. So that is going to be something new that we've never had to do before. So we're hoping everybody can work together to pull this off. As far as cleaning our buses, staff will be wiping down all the high touch point areas after each run. So if it's, for example, you have a high school, middle school, and elementary, every time the kids exit the bus, their driver's going to go through, wipe the handrails, wipe off the tops of the seats before kids get back on. As far as the rest of our cleaning and disinfecting, the buses each night will be cleaned and disinfected using the Protexis electric static sprayers. So every morning, everybody starts off with a clean, fresh bus. It goes throughout the day, and then by the end of the evening, it is all clean to start with a fresh bus again. If anything comes up with any transportation issues, please feel free to contact me at any given time. At this point, I'm going to be turning everything over to Tim Ames from our facilities. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Tim Ames. I'm Director of Facilities at Kenton Schools, and want to talk to you a little bit about cleaning and disinfecting of the buildings. Our custodial staff for the last couple of years has been using the Protexis electrostatic sprayers for their daily regimen of cleaning tools, which has shown effective against the viruses and aids in cleaning the buildings. They'll continue to use them throughout the opening, making sure that all the classrooms are disinfected on a nightly basis. Disinfectant wipes and hand sanitizers will be dispersed throughout the buildings, giving everybody the opportunity to have access to the disinfectant. PPE, we've ordered a large amount of face masks and eyeglasses and equipment for the kids, the teachers, the nurses. That'll be distributed out throughout the opening. We continue to focus on air circulation recommendations. We've been working with our engineers to discuss air movement in the buildings, clean air, filtration. We continue to work on that, doing the best we can with our heating and ventilation equipment in the buildings. We just received our shipment of temperature scanners for our entrances in the building. They will take temperatures of groupings coming in the building. So it'll do like 20 people at a time. It'll take their temperatures to notify us whether or not somebody's got an elevated temperature. Social distancing markings will be installed in the buildings. We'll have the 6-foot markings on the floor. We'll have center stripes down the hallway to keep traffic flowing properly. And there be plenty of markings on the buildings, on the walls inside the schools, signifying social distancing. We work with our custodial staff for cleaning procedures. We've worked closely with our supplier of custodial supplies for cleaning equipment, and everybody's getting educated on what needs to happen in the buildings to keep them clean and disinfected. So, thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Jeff Richards, the Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. Last week, leadership from the Kenton School District and leaders from across Western New York met with Dr. Gail Burstein from the Erie County Department of Health. On this call, Dr. Burstein emphasized that it was the County Health Department's responsibility to provide testing for COVID-19. It is not the school's responsibility. In her words, schools educate, we do the contact tracing. To this end, the district has created a comprehensive plan guided by our nurse practitioner, Deb Carey, in collaboration with the health department. We've developed procedures to assist in the investigation of student and staff positive results and contact tracing procedures. The following outlines our general plan in dealing with these situations. If there's a confirmed case of COVID-19 with our student or staff population, the Kenton District will work very closely with the Erie County Department of Health. The Department of Health will initiate investigations for each case and work with us to identify contact tracing protocols. Contact tracing would identify those individuals who may have come into close contact. Close contact means you've been within 6 feet of an infected individual for 10 or more minutes. The district is working to ensure that we have assigned seating for students in each of their classrooms and on their buses. All visitors, where permitted, shall be required to sign in at all buildings. The Department of Health will then make contact with any individual identified in their contact tracing through phone calls and advise of the need for quarantine. If a student or staff member tests positive for COVID-19, they cannot return for a minimum of 10 days following the onset of symptoms, which includes at least 3 days without a fever, which is defined as less than 100 degrees Fahrenheit. The return of the student or staff member would be a joint effort between the Erie County Department of Health and the district, and each case will be fact-specific. If a student or staff member is exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19, the individual will be isolated from the general population, assessed by one of our school nurses, and sent home if they exhibit these symptoms of COVID-19. Instructions will follow that state that the student or staff could return with a note from their physician stating they are diagnosed with something other than COVID-19. They have a COVID-19 test that's negative, or they may return after they have stayed home for at least 10 days from the onset of symptoms. Some students suffer from conditions that resemble COVID-19 symptoms, such as seasonal allergies and asthma. In order to reduce the number of students who may be isolated due to these pre-existing conditions that present as COVID-related symptoms, we will accept notes from a doctor indicating the condition. These should be sent directly to the nurse of the school in which your child attends. Importantly, all students will continue to be monitored for symptoms based on CDC guidelines, notwithstanding the submission of this documentation. Please note that this plan is delineated in more specific detail on the district website under the reopening tab at the top page in the blue banner. Specific questions related to your child should be directed directly to your school nurse for the 2021 school year. Now, I will turn it back over to Superintendent Samato.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, let me just stop sharing here for one moment. And we'll get back to, or we'll actually move forward to the question and answer section. So as you can see, that was a very brief presentation, but an overview of some very critical points when it comes to reopening. We're watching the live chat. We have a team of about 15 people that are here answering your questions as you type them in. I want to reiterate that not only will this be posted to our website, a recording of this, but all questions will be addressed and answered. Many times you'll see that either these are questions that might be in our FAQ. I want to point you to that frequently asked questions document on our website. And if we receive, of course, we're receiving even new questions tonight and further clarifications, those will be added to our FAQ on our website, which will remain up. Also, I want to just point out that if you feel that you want to attend another meeting, we have this same meeting that will be, well, not the exact same, but the same format. One will be on Wednesday evening at 5 o'clock, and the other one will be on Thursday evening at 6 o'clock. So whether you want to get further, or you want to receive further clarification, if you want to watch the presentation again live, or if you just want to spend time with us as a Kenton community, just in case you feel that you missed something and you just want to soak all this in a little bit more, please feel free to join us on those 2 other times. So ladies and gentlemen, you could see that there's a lot that's going into this. We keep on giving you these updates, and we know that this short time that we spend with you is not nearly sufficient as a community to truly understand the depth of everything that is being considered and the work that's going into this. I want to reiterate, though, that we have 2 main objectives here, folks. First and foremost, the safety of our students, our families, and our staff has to be paramount. Safety trumps everything. The second objective, that's a very close objective, is what will give us as a school district the best educational model possible. Now, we know at this late date that this is very difficult on families. It is why we opened up that virtual academy option to see if we can figure out the staffing as well as the scheduling to run that simultaneously to the hybrid. But let me be very clear. That is not the only thing that is pushing or determining what model that we're going to finally land on. And I'm not trying to string families along. I'm trying to be very transparent. When it comes to safety and security of our students, our families, and our staff, there's a lot that needs to be considered. For example, we are constantly looking at the rates of infection. We are receiving our guidance from the DOH daily. We're also receiving our guidance from our buildings daily of what can and cannot happen. So I don't want anyone to have the misperception that we are absolutely just only moving forward based on what our infection rate is locally. Folks, we look at the safe operations of schools daily when we're not in COVID. So when we're looking at that safe operation, it's going to come down to the safety of this virus. It's going to come down to safe supervision. It's going to come down to how we are going to provide that instruction and making sure that everything is safe as we're doing it. So with that being said, that's why on Friday, we will be making that final announcement. We are going to take all of our feedback. We're going to look at the scheduling of that virtual this week. We're going to look at that feedback. That virtual, just so that everyone is on the same page, more than 1,400, I believe closer to 1,500 students. I'm sorry, I'm getting corrected from one of our team members. We're now up to 1,700 students that have signed up for that virtual academy as of today. We are more than 1,000 students that have signed up to say that they will not be accepting transportation for this first half of the year as well. So I thank all the families for that response, for our community for being so patient. Those are some of the things that we're taking into consideration this week. We are looking at, of course, our staffing. Ladies and gentlemen, our teachers and our staff have families as well. They are working their best to make sure that they are able to create safe environments, not only for our students, but for their families. So we're taking all of that into consideration. That's why we need just a little bit more time, and we will have that final guidance. We'll be meeting late into the night on Thursday to make that final determination. Let's get to some questions live. You can see all the answers as they're scrolling through on YouTube Live, but I'm going to discuss some of them right now, the same format that we did the other night. Now, the first 10 minutes, I'm going to focus on instruction and schedule. The first 10 minutes of question, even though we will be discussing all of the, or typing out all the questions and answers as we go through at any time, I'll take the first 10 minutes and focus on instruction and scheduling. So the first question, when are you making a decision on how school will reopen? As I just discussed, on Friday, we'll announce our decision on reopening. That will be the final decision for September, and we'll give a timeline for everything as we're moving forward. When will parents find out what group they are in? The week of August 24th, which, believe it or not, is just next week, families will be able to log into the parent portal and learn what cohort they are assigned to. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we need your help with parent portal. Make sure that you have your parent portal account done. You can do that through our district website if you have not done so in the past, but that is your best way of always staying in tune with not only scheduling, not only models, but everything from grades to transportation for your child. Will students maintain a class schedule when they are learning remotely? Will they be able to use Google Classroom or Zoom to video into classes? The answer is yes. K through 12 will have 4 days of synchronous learning. So we will follow that model of Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday for synchronous learning. In a remote schedule, K4 will have a modified course schedule. 5 through 12 will have a modified period schedule. Students will log into Google Classroom, Canvas to class, and access the Google Meet video link to be able to connect with their teachers synchronously. Now, folks, we also have to be mindful that one of the challenges that we will always face, whether it's a hybrid model or a fully remote model, is that families oftentimes have multiple children in the household. So being able to log in, we will have some flexibility with that. And as we go through, when this, excuse me, this final model is announced, we will also give explicit directions on that scheduling. You can look at our reopening plans to see what hybrid and remote look like on those days of the week. Is VLA is Virtual Learning Academy, confirmed then? Does this change if the district decides to start remote? The KT VLA is still in development. It is being developed. This is the answer. It is being developed as a standalone program and will be independent of the hybrid remote model deployed by the district. So as we described in our virtual learning forum last week on Thursday that we had, this Virtual Learning Academy is very fluid. I just want to give people an example of everything that goes into that. So you just heard me say that 1,700 students registered. We have to be able to look at all the logistics that go into those 1,700. What grade are they in? How can we pull a teacher for those models and still be able to offer the hybrid in-person model? So as you can see, a lot will go into that. We'll look at how many students there are per grade level. We'll also look at how many teachers we would have to pull to meet the needs of those students. Also, what kind of model that would look like in order to meet all of those needs. So that's what we're determining over the next 3 days that go into this final model that will be announced as well. How will special education services be provided in a hybrid scenario? The answer, in a hybrid scenario, specific self-contained classes would meet every day in-person attendance is offered. So that would be that Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. All students will receive their IEP services through their assigned special education teacher. Teachers and therapists will work together and with families to provide as much during direct contact time, as well as meeting students' needs virtually based on individual abilities and IEP goals and accommodations. So you can see that students that require those special services, besides just the hybrid and virtual model that we're attempting to create, we'll also be looking at that in-person every day for several of those, especially self-contained settings. We have about 3 more minutes that I'll spend on instructional and scheduling. If a child is staying home for a 10-day quarantine period, will they be permitted to attend online classes? Well, this is an excellent question, because this is also one of the things that we have to consider when we're offering our instructional models. Right now, I hate to say a fear, but a fear as we're going through this planning is a fear of the unknown. We have to plan for the unknown so that we could eradicate that fear and we know exactly how to proceed in the event. So to answer this question, yes, we will want those students to remain engaged in their classes to continue their learning throughout their absence. So how do we continue that? And that will also continue to be rolled out because we do know that the quarantine periods are substantial in the event that there is a confirmed case, or even when we're waiting for students and or staff to return. Remember, folks, our staff are human beings as well. The same consideration that we have to worry about for our students, we have to worry about for our staff. So in the event that a staff member had to quarantine, now as a district, we would have to worry about how are we providing coverage for that staff member and what that staff member can and cannot do. So staff have to consider a lot when it comes to that. That's not a slam or a negative against our staff. It is a reality that we're facing when it comes into the logistics. All school districts are facing because staff have to worry about those same safety precautions that come along with COVID that our students and families have to worry about as well. I think this will be the last question under instruction, but we'll continue to answer those questions on the YouTube live format through the typing. Will the district provide devices to families who need one to assist with remote learning? Plans are currently in the works to provide devices to families that need one. Because of limited supplies, families are encouraged to use their own device if at all possible. The district is not a one-to-one district yet with one device for each student, but we are working towards that goal. Families, let me be very, very explicit in this answer. We are not one-to-one, but it has become an immediate priority that we become one-to-one. So we have ordered these devices and we are waiting for these devices to come in. In the event that we are in a remote, or even for those students that are virtual, we will absolutely follow these guidelines in rolling out devices. First, we'll ask families who don't have access to devices, we will prioritize that way. Then it'll probably be that we're prioritizing multiple students in households, because typically a household does not have multiple devices, but they may have multiple students that have to learn simultaneously. Then we will move to going to the one-to-one. Now, if we have our way and this works as planned, I'm hoping that before mid-year, as a Kenton district, we will be fully one-to-one. That is a tall order. It is a tall task. Thank you for your patience with that. I'm not going to talk about past or why we're not there. What we are going to focus on what we need to do to get there. And to get there, the orders are placed. We will then have to format those computers, and there's all sorts of planning and procedures that go into place. What I can tell you is this: if you are still in possession of a device from previously, you will get information about returning that device if you were not able to already return it. For those seniors who are graduating tomorrow evening, make sure that that device, it should have been returned today, make sure that device comes back tomorrow to ensure your graduation. But also for those families that we're not talking about seniors, please make sure that you're working to get those devices back to the schools. We have to proceed accordingly. Those devices are expensive. We need to update those devices, and we need to make sure that that goes with the partnership with the community that we always speak of, the partnership between the district and the community with this hand in hand. That's what we can use your help with. The next 10 minutes will focus specifically on food service. Will school food service as well as transportation? Will school meals be free to all like they were in the spring, as Ms. Roll discussed? That's a federal government the federal government was very supportive in the spring, and that was an initiative that they took. So the answer is no, not in this fall, at least not to what we've been told up to this point. Free and reduced price breakfast and lunch will be available to eligible students, but all meals will be free for CEP, Community Eligibility Provision Schools. Those schools are Franklin Elementary, Franklin Middle, Holmes, Hoover Elementary, and Hoover Middle. Meals at the remaining schools are based on eligibility, and students not eligible, unfortunately, will have to pay. Now, folks, I want to be very clear. That is not a district decision. That's not something that we decide as a district. That's all through our federal free and reduced breakfast and lunch program, and the federal government decides if a school is a CEP school. So I just want to be clear, if we had our way, everybody would be free. That's the goal that we would always love to meet. Unfortunately, we are strapped by those guidelines from the federal government. So please be understanding and patient when it comes to that. Will kids be eating lunch in the classroom? The answer: elementary students will eat lunch in classrooms because lunchrooms are not big enough to facilitate the social distancing. In middle and high schools, students will pick up their lunches in the cafeteria and report to those assigned eating areas. So let's talk about that. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. That is a challenge. I'm not going to lie or tell you something just to make it sound wonderful. That's something that we are planning. So when we say we're planning, we're not just talking about numbers, folks. We're talking about the safe supervision of students at all times. And I'm not just talking about kids acting poorly or disrespectfully when I'm speaking of safe supervision. I'm speaking of, we have to make sure that the students have a healthy environment for all aspects of the day. And that includes our lunch supervision. So in the elementary level, we have to make sure that not only do we have a clean, safe environment, those elementary students are in the classroom at all times. That's going to include lunch. But at the high school and middle school level, we have to be able to make sure that students can social distance. So when we say eating areas, we are taking areas all throughout the school and redesignating certain areas as cafeteria areas in order for students to eat lunch, so that we can make sure that students are social distant. Because as everyone can imagine, there is no being able to eat with this covering our face. We have to be able to make sure that students are social distant and able to pull their mask off and eat their lunch. This is a challenge. It is a big challenge, but it is going into the scheduling. It's going into how we're figuring out virtual learning, and it will ultimately be one of those indicators that when we land on, are we starting in a fully remote or are we starting in a hybrid? And let me just clarify. There is no, not from this superintendent, I'm not trying to push this community in only one way, shape, or form. As educators, we want students back at school. We want absolutely students back at school. But I will only put students back at school if we meet everything to make sure that everything is safe and secure. This is one of those things that we have to consider. We're down to about 5 or 6 minutes left for transportation and food service. I'm wondering if they make accommodations to make the room nut-free, or if my child would be sitting by himself in the classroom and nuts are allowed. The answer: accommodations will be made to ensure all students with food allergies are provided with safe, allergen-free eating areas. And folks, here's another thing to be very transparent. In our models of in-person learning, our lunches are not going to be anywhere near where we've become accustomed to in Kenton. We have a wonderful food service department. I'm telling you, just from seeing how Miss Roll works and her staff are second to none. And that staff, they will be limited in what they're going to be able to offer for students, because we will not have all of these separate areas for students to be able to not only socially distant, but then just make sure that safety, once again, safety and security of our students is followed. So our offerings are going to be very limited this coming year. Just be prepared for that. Transportation. Would there be staggered arrival times getting to school? The answer: start and end times are not scheduled to be changed, but the state has provided school districts with flexibility over instructional minute requirements, which allows students or schools to consider more flexibility in arrival and dismissal period. For example, elementary schools will have an extended period time of arrival. So in moving to the hybrid model, we know that it's going to take us longer to bring kids in, and we will have some flex time for that. So once that is announced this Friday, if hybrid with that virtual model is what we're able to do, then we will absolutely be very clear on how that arrival schedule, instead of just saying it will be flexible, we'll delineate it for families and schools as well. But we are scheduling to stay on that arrival and dismissal time with our schools. Just a couple minutes left in this section. Could bus students potentially be screened before getting on the bus by either the bus monitor or driver at their bus stops, therefore limiting the potential for a sick child getting onto the school bus? This is that partnership that we're speaking of. Folks, there is no possible way to keep transportation to consistently monitor before getting onto the buses. That's why we're, even in the CDC guidelines, that Department of Health guidelines, it is saying that parents will need to screen their children for those 4 set of standards. You'll see them on our website, one of which is the temperature check before they ever even come to the bus stop. There are a lot of things. Let me give you some of the things that we have to consider. For example, we have to make sure why students are meeting those and why we're asking parents to make sure before they ever enter the bus. First of all, to absolutely limit the spread. That is common sense, to make sure that that spread is limited in coming onto the buses. Secondly, we cannot, let's say a parent is not at the bus stop and the student is coming on. We will have to make sure that we are isolating that student on the bus. So we're asking parents before they ever come to the bus stop, please isolate them. Do not send students to school with any of the symptoms, or if you check yes on any of those prerequisites on those 4 things before they come to school. We need you on that, folks. Now, as a secondary backup, sure, when they're coming into the schools, we're checking into that, and our bus drivers will be trained to look for symptoms and things of that nature. But we also have to be cognizant of Buffalo winters, how we have to keep transportation moving as well. Final question, will bus service be provided to Catholic school students who will be attending in person all 5 days? And yes. Also for BOCES, for our students that are taking advantage of any of the BOCES services, we will be providing transportation. But once we're in that final model, we will absolutely be announcing that. So please stay tuned. Once again, this meeting is part of the data that we're looking at. We're looking at all of the concerns of the community, and when we're making that final determination. Moving on to cleaning and safety for the next few minutes here. Does the district currently have in stock enough hand sanitizer, hand soaps, disinfecting cleaning products, and disinfecting sprays and other PPE to last the entire first 20 weeks of school? Here's the answer. We have ordered and are receiving vast quantities of PPE, including disposable masks, gowns, pairs of gloves, goggles, hand sanitizers, wipes, K95 masks, face shields, and polycarbonate barriers. Folks, let me not beat around the bush with this. This is absolutely one of the main contributing factors in determining our models. Not going to lie. There is a big challenge for school districts in receiving enough PPE for a duration of time. I'm telling you as your superintendent, if I feel that it's not adequate, we will be going fully remote. Period, end of story. We are looking at that this week. We are getting those final numbers. Not to be overly aggressive with it, but I will not allow our students, our kiddos, to come to our schools. I will not allow our staff to come to our schools if I do not feel that there is enough PPE on hand. And that means for a very long duration of time. I am not going to say because we have something for 2 weeks that we're able to come back to school because of 2 weeks. Nobody asked, especially our families, to be put into any dangerous situation when it comes to COVID. Nobody asked for this. But I will absolutely make sure, and especially our principals, our teachers, our staff that's here answering questions, we will absolutely make sure that if we are not for certain that we could follow those guidelines and that we could return to schools, then we will remain in a remote. That's why I announced that on Friday. That's why I announced that the Friday before. It is not that I'm leaning towards anything. It is absolutely that we are looking at the reality of numbers. And if those numbers aren't clear enough by the middle of this week, then that is how we will be coming out. That is one of the contributing factors that could lead us to that type of announcement on Friday. If Wednesdays are for deep cleaning after students are there Mondays and Tuesdays, will there be a deep cleaning on Saturday after the Thursday and Friday students? Let me be very clear on this as well. There is no such thing as deep clean. We've been reassured by our department, our buildings and grounds crew, also just like our food service crew, they are second to none. They are cleaning deeply every day. Every day, every evening, they are going to work around the clock to make sure that this is done. Wednesday in the hybrid model is not closed down because of deep cleaning. That is not the case. We would have never ever proposed a every other day academic option, the original one that we proposed, if we felt that we needed a day solely for deep cleaning. We will be deep cleaning every evening. That day on Wednesday will be a lot of different things. It will be a day that our teachers are taking to have some individual time with students. It will be in the hybrid model I'm talking about as well, okay? It will be a day that teachers are preparing for their lessons, for a lot goes into remote instruction, that they will continue to work. If we're in a hybrid model, teachers are in front of half of the students on 2 days and the other half on the other 2 days. When we're looking at instruction, that middle day is to prepare and to work with getting stuff online for students that are home for those other 2 days, whether they're home on Monday and Tuesday or they're home on Thursday and Friday. That is why we went with that, the logistics of that Wednesday. I do not, and I will never echo or say that Wednesday will be a deep clean day. But to also answer, yes, on weekends, our crew will absolutely be cleaning just like they are during the week. So that cleaning will continue on the weekends. What will be or has been done with respect to the cleaning or updating of heating, air, ventilation systems in these older schools? Wow, we have a very educated community to even ask and to go there with these questions. I'm very proud of people being on top of where things are. And with this virus, we currently utilize MERV, minimum efficiency reporting value, in our classroom heating units and our central house fans. Converting to a higher MERV rating will decrease airflow and overtax the motors in which these units are, which will lead to inefficiency and higher energy consumption. We have explored using bipolar ionization as a means of air disinfecting, but we have received notice from the state education department that this process is not permitted. So, ladies and gentlemen, let me be very clear for this, because we've talked about everything. I've heard everything from comments of MERV 13, okay? Folks, our units cannot handle. They cannot move the air that is safe to move the air with such a high filtration as a MERV 13. But we are absolutely meeting the requirements that the state education department and the DOH has put forward on schools. But I'm not going to lie to you. This is another one of those considerations that we have to have front and center when we're looking at the safe operation of schools. Just to put some numbers in front of you. Some people may say, well, Samato, then what are you doing? Put in new air handling units. Well, let's take one example of air handling. Air handling units at one of our schools, one of our high schools, I won't even tell you which high school, but just for one of our high schools would get into the tens of millions of dollars to change those air handling units over, to be able to accept a MERV 13 filter. But that is not the only safe answer for air handling. We did look at these ionization things, these bipolar ionization, but then we were told that we could not utilize bipolar ionization, so we had to move away from it. We looked at, could we use infrared lighting? Some of you who have recently purchased a high efficiency furnace for your home, you have these red lights that plug in and they light up all the air travel through there, so that it is also not only stopping it with the filter, but also killing certain viruses and bacteria with that infrared light. I could tell you today, sure, we could put a bunch of infrared lights on our units, but we also know that I'm not going to lie to you, ladies and gentlemen, and say that they're going to be some miracle that we're looking for, because the amount of air that needs to travel over through our systems in order to make our buildings safe for just air circulation, those infrared lights would have no effect. So we're not going to do something or say something just for the fact of appearing that we're safe. We are truly looking for the safest options that we could have. So we are continuing to look at airflow. We are meeting those standards for a school to operate safely, but we are unable to get up to a MERV 13, for example, in our schools. So that is very clear, and I hope that answered that question to the best of my ability. I'm not an HVAC expert, but I can tell you what I've learned. Okay, moving on now for our contact tracing and testing. We're going to run about 5 to 10 minutes over here, ladies and gentlemen. Our presentation went a little bit longer, so getting into actually, I'll get into contact tracing, or I'll put that into temperature checking now, if you don't mind. Pat, actually, if you can move back up to that one, I do want to answer this question. Temperature checking, and then we can move on to that next section. How is this something that the schools can do? So once again, that partnership. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that it might even sound corny and hokey that we're saying this has to be a full partnership. We really need to rely on the community for this partnership and for their end of that partnership. So please help us. Parents will be required to confirm that their child does not have a fever each day before sending children to school. As a further precaution, we will have temperature scanners that are being installed at school entrances, and school nurses will temperature check at any point if someone is exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19 or appears to have a fever. So let's be, as the kids would say, let's be for real when it comes to this. The for real facts of COVID-19 are not just fever related. That is something that not only schools are contending with, but anyone who owns a business, and for our families, anytime they're deciding to go out in public. So New York State is taking this very seriously. We commend all of our leadership at the state level. That is why we are as low as we are currently. But schools need to also be very cognizant of what would happen and what symptoms are of COVID-19. So of course, in the beginning, if we do come back in a hybrid model, we would be discussing this, and not only discussing, but training our teachers for the look-fors. We'll be training our health staff. Our health staff is doing a wonderful job, but we'll also be training students on what the look-fors for themselves. We'll be sharing it with the community on these weekly updates, on these daily updates sometimes, what to continue to look for. I'm not a healthcare professional, but we will continue to share all of the best practice and knowledge that we not only learn from our leaders at the state level, but also our Department of Health, our own Erie County Department of Health. Dr. Gail Burstein is always willing to meet with us and advise how we're going to proceed. And we'll continue to follow that guidance as well, but we need our families. We need you. Our final section, our contact testing and tracing, our cabinet member, Mr. Richards, shared a lot with what we learned from Dr. Burstein last week. Will COVID testing be a requirement for children? The answer is no, but we will follow up with the Erie County Department of Health guidance for testing, and their procedures will be followed if a student or staff is symptomatic or in the event of positive testing. Folks, we put up on our website, per directive from Governor Cuomo last Friday, a section that outlines our testing and contact tracing. This is all done through Erie County Department of Health. And you can not only see the procedures that we'll follow as a district, but also the flow charts of what Erie County Department of Health follows in the event of symptomatic, not symptomatic, but positive tests. Symptomatic cases in our school district, in the event that we send somebody home for symptoms, let me be very clear, whether it's a student or staff, they are not returning to our schools unless one of the three things are met. Number one, we get a negative test result. They present us with that negative test result. They have gone to one of the testing facilities and they have that documentation to prove that it's negative. Number two, they have a letter from a healthcare provider that says, let's say that they do not have COVID, or that these are symptoms of, let's just say, allergies. They have something from their doctor that says they are cleared to come back to the school facility. Number three, you'll see in all of the guidance, 10 days. Correct me if I'm wrong, everybody in the room, our nursing staff, also any of our leadership team, it's 10 days that they are symptom-free from any of the COVID symptoms. You'll hear things like 3 days, non-negotiably 3 days without a fever, that people can be considered. So even if they've gone 10 days without a symptom, I don't see how one would outweigh the other. I don't see how you could go 3 days. That 3 days would fall into the 10 days without and being symptom-free. Next question. If a kid leaves school with a fever, does everyone close to that child that day have to quarantine until the child gets tested and the results are received? The answer to this is no. That's the guidance that we were given from Erie County Department of Health. Close contacts will be determined by the Erie County Department of Health contact tracers in collaboration with the school district. If we could scroll back down, thank you. With the school district, if a student or staff tested positive. So let me be clear on this, because this is one of those hard pieces of data that we are considering when it comes to all of our PPE that we have, personal protective equipment that we have, all of the procedures for contact tracing, the knowledge of our buildings, what we have and what would be available to us in a hybrid model versus a fully remote model. And we'll look at all of that and make sure. Now, I'm not just saying which is the safest. We need to make sure that no matter what, that we absolutely can guarantee that safety in the model that we are going to come forward with. So that will play a very crucial role. Next question. How many positive COVID tests before school is shut down? That depends on multiple factors. Here's the answer. That will be determined in consult with the Erie County Department of Health and New York State guidelines. Governor Cuomo actually said it very clearly today. If they see at the state level that we've reached the threshold, according to the state, according to the governor's office, that a school needs to be shut down, they're going to shut us down. We won't have any option in that. So there is a lot of communication working around the clock between our local Department of Health, the state, and the state health officials, and they will tell us very clearly that we need to shut down if that indeed is the case. Next question. Will the school be testing students on a consistent basis? We are not doing the conducting the COVID testing. In the event that we have to send anybody out of our building and home, we will give those people, whether it's a staff member or it's a student and a family, we will give them a listing based on what Erie County Department of Health is telling us are locations for them to receive tests, and we will highly recommend that they receive a test. Remember, in order for anyone to re-enter our facilities, those three things that I mentioned earlier that will be required, one of those three things for anyone to return. So if somebody leaves with symptoms, they are not simply able to return the next day and say, oh, well, you know what, I felt better that evening. It's not the way it'll work. but it is one of the things that we have to consider when we're deciding whether or not to reopen our buildings in our hybrid model. And remember the reason why we said 100% of in-person is impossible. Folks, we cannot follow the social distancing requirements, even with wearing masks and all of the requirements, and be able to return to 100% in person. It is impossible. So that is why I'll keep on saying that the hybrid is our best option, our only option to return to in-person instruction in any resemblance of in-person instruction that we could have at this point. We are down to our final 2 minutes. So this may be our last question. We'll see if we can get a couple more in, but minimally this question. If a child in my kid's class has a fever, will they immediately be required to take a COVID test? So this is one of those pieces of information that's very sensitive. The answer is no. We cannot require as a school anyone to receive a test. We can't. We've been told that, we've been advised that by Erie County Department of Health in our meeting with Dr. Gail Burstein last week. I love this question because it is one of those clear-cut things that is very troubling to people, but I'm not going to be anything but transparent. We cannot require students to have tests. That's why they have one of those three things. We know enough about COVID that if a student did not get a test, that's why they cannot return until 10 days, minimally 10 days from the time that they have been symptom-free, okay? Once again, students or staff member who has been sent home due to symptoms of COVID-19 must have a provider note or a negative COVID-19 test before returning to school, or it has been 10 days from the onset of symptoms. 10 days from the onset. I think we can get one more question in. If the numbers remain low enough through the first quarter, will hybrid and VLA be reevaluated to maybe return to school full time for the rest of the year? Look at, ladies and gentlemen, when I'm telling you and I use the word fluid, fluid is as fluid gets in this situation. I'm going to be very clear about this. I wish that I had a crystal ball and I could tell us, look, if we went into this model, we'll be in this model exactly for 4 weeks and 3 days, and we'll be able to come back. It's one of the most difficult things for a community to hear from their superintendent is the 3 words, I don't know. It's terrible. It's terrible. And that is what we're contending with right now. We will absolutely look at safety and security, the best instructional model. We'll combine that with, of course, what Governor Cuomo and our Erie County leadership is looking to us and telling us in infection rates, in positive test rates, and we will make our most informed decision always. So even if we were to come out and say that we must go to a fully remote model because of all the mitigating factors that we know from the data that we're looking at, I will never tell you that we are going to go to a fully remote model for the rest of the school year at this point. I just won't. So we'll reevaluate the model every minimally 10 weeks unless the state health department directs us otherwise. Ladies and gentlemen, we are 15 minutes over. We knew that we're sticking to about an hour, but we've gone for an hour and 15 minutes. We will post this up on our website. We will also continue to answer all of the questions as they come through on this live feed. We will continue to have the FAQ up. We will have 2 more meetings just like this, and we will meet late into the night on Thursday, working through all of the data that we know. I promise you that we will take all of the data and make the most informed decision that we can based on those 2 objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, I also know that me being with you for the past 6 weeks, at the end of the day, Friday, No matter what, the data also is telling me now that half of you will love me and half of you will probably not be too happy with me. And I understand that. But please understand that this team here in Kenton and what I've seen through the past 6 weeks of what they're willing to do to make sure that we are making the best decision. We are not making subjective decisions. We are going to make the best decision based on the information that we have in front of us and that we know to meet the safety of our students and our staff and provide the best educational model possible. I thank you very much. We thank you very much. I thank the community. I thank our teachers and our administrators, especially the teams that have been working so hard for so long. And thank you, families, for your patience. We will see you again on Wednesday.